Well, thank you very much, everybody. As you can see, the sun has started to shine on me up here, so hopefully I won't be doing that too much, but it's lovely to see you all. Um, so the main intention really for today is just to kind of start talking about the emotional impact of being alongside somebody that you love, a family member, be that a child, wife, husband, partner, um, or anybody really within the family, or indeed within your friendship circle. So I've got some slides that I'll go through, but also there'll be opportunity towards the end to do a Q&A, so to really open it up. And that bit will make sure isn't part of the recording, right? So that you feel free to ask any questions or to ask each other or to share in whichever way you wish. So what I'll do is pull up my slides, but before I do that, if you've got your phone with you, right, there'll be a point where I'll be asking you quite quickly into the presentation to to build a word cloud with me. I don't know whether folk know what that is, but or you may have done this in other kind of settings. But it's basically there'll be a QR code on the screen. If you could lift your phone and just open that QR code, then it will take you through to a mini poll, right, where it just asks you to put in 3 words. Okay, but I'll say that more when we get to that point in the presentation. But it was just if you have got a phone with you or near at hand, it would be great if you could use it. Right? If you can't, that's not a problem. It's just a useful way of just bringing things alive in the room, but I can also be asking that question of you. Okay, so let me pull up my slides. Okay. Okay, so we're presenting this webinar on behalf of Better Together. So there's recognition that everybody is coming in from slightly different spaces in terms of the type of people that are the type of folk you're alongside and the conditions that they have. So the presentation will try to we'll try to kind of tap into the various different demands of caring for a child or up to the 18, or being alongside an adult with a condition, or say if it's a parent that has a condition. So it's a big topic and lots of different experiences I know already from just seeing your names coming into the room. So so bear with me and make sure that if you feel that I haven't touched on something which is pertinent to the condition that you are alongside, then bring it up in the Q&A and we'll make sure that we address it then. They'll also, at the very end of the presentation, I'll be talking about various different opportunities you have as people alongside a person with a diagnosis to join managing stress groups, to join courses to access psychology support individually for yourself or family therapy support. So and I'll talk about that in more detail as we go through. Okay. But first and foremost, welcome. I know that one of the issues that I come across when I'm speaking to carers is very much that your time is not your own necessarily. And by coming and even joining this particular session, you're no doubt away from potentially things that you would be doing for the person that you're alongside. But what I wanted to do was actually start with a slide which basically I started every presentation with. So anybody who's been in or witnessed one which has been recorded or been in one before will recognize it. And it's the idea that throughout our lives, we build this often quite elaborate jigsaw of what's important to us. It's kind of a picture of our lives. So we piece it together as we decide which career we're going to pursue, or what leisure, whether we're into we're into running or comedy or gigs or we're into crafts, whatever. We build this elaborate jigsaw of just who we are and what matters to us. And our family will be in there and our jobs will be in there. And invariably, when a diagnosis of one of the conditions that are part of the Better Together partnership, one of those conditions come into our lives, one, they're often incredibly unexpected. And basically, it's as if they've gone under this jigsaw that you've been putting together for your life and just thrown it up in the air. It's not just the pieces of the person with the diagnosis, their jigsaw that's gone up in the air, it's yours too. And it's uninvited. And you find yourself in that space where these pieces of your life are kind of scattered in all sorts of directions. What was central to you, perhaps in terms of your work, suddenly has to take second place to the practicalities of taking your loved one to appointments, or it could be long stays in hospital alongside them if it's a wee one who's having a stem cell transplant. So what I'm going to be trying to tap into is just the extraordinary nature of not just the person with a diagnosis and what they're going through, but also you alongside. You're drawn in, and often you're there because you're there and you love them, and you willingly show up and you willingly rise to the challenge. But it wasn't necessarily part of your agenda. It wasn't part of the script, and so it can have quite a kind of a rippling and kind of impact, emotional and very practical. And also, even as we've seen in the news over the last couple of days, a financial impact. If you're having to reduce your work hours so that you are caring for somebody, and the kind of the pivotal nature, if you increase your work hours ever so slightly, that kind of jeopardizes or compromise your benefits. It's just extraordinary. The ripples that go out from somebody's diagnosis within a family, and being alongside without any suggestion of unwillingness or any suggestion of feeling a bit. But there can be sometimes people will talk about feeling kind of guilty that they are considering just how upended their life has been. So I'll be very, very sensitive to this as I go through. And I'm talking. I didn't really introduce myself, did I? I'm Lesley. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist, and I'm lead psychologist for Maggie's across the whole of the UK, but I'm also lead psychologist for Better Together. And so for the last, well, the majority of my career, which is over 30 years now, I've been working with families who have, through no fault of their own, have had uninvited change of the trauma of a physical health problem, and how I can help to help them navigate that space. And so I've heard many stories of those folk who have the diagnosis, but equally loads of stories about those people who are alongside. Okay, so this is where I'm going to ask you if you're able to get your phones out and to just help me with this one, right? So it's literally what should come up, and I'll do it with you, is three opportunities. Sorry, there, I'll just reduce that. So I just want you to just like during COVID, we'd QR code ourselves into various different venues. What I wanted you to do I'll just make sure you're on the right page. Can you see it at the moment? Yeah. And in it, just a second, I've just got to change this slightly. It won't be a second. So I'll just stop sharing for a moment. Just need to rejig the one that you should be looking at. Right, okay. So coming back to you, going back to this. Here we go. So yeah. So what you should be able to see when you put in the QR code now, I hope, is a, oh, just, can I just check what people can see at the moment on their screen and on their phones? Hannah, could you tell me what you can see?
It's not on the presenter view, it's on, you've got the slides going down the side as well.
Yeah. So,
And it's the 3 words phrases that you sum up with the
yeah, so
QR
it
code.
is that one. That's fine. Thank you.
But on my phone, I think I go to the what are you going to do for you?
Oh, right. That's what I was worried. That's what
Yeah.
I was worried about. Sorry, just let me rejig this completely at the moment. Sorry about that, everybody. Because that's what I was worried about was that right. Right, I'll just check. Right. Hopefully, yes, it should have come up now. What you're seeing are which 3 words or phrases sum up being a carer to you. So the person who usefully put them into the other slot, put them in again, if you don't mind, into the slot that you can see now. I hope I haven't confused people too much. So, okay, so you should be able to see these 3, putting in 3 words. And just as that person who spoke up, if you do come off mute, if I'm confusing you and you say, for goodness sake, Lesley, will you explain yourself better?
It was me, Helen, and I can see the right one now.
Right, that's grand. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to I'm going to go to the stop sharing that screen and then open up the other one. Wait me a second. Right. Okay. And what I'm going to do is somebody's very usefully put some in the chat. So I'm going to enter those for you so that they appear. This is important because I don't think we ever capture just some of the words. And nobody will know who it is that's put these in, right? So please just say as much as if you feel able, into there. It's quite something when you see this. You'll get a copy of this. You'll be offered the opportunity to.
Lesley, sorry, there's some more in the chat if you want to add those in.
Is there another one in the chat? Okay. Okay. What I'll do is I'll put those in. Right. I can override it and put those ones in for you. They may not appear just yet. But if you see in the chat that stressful, exhausting, life is not your own anymore. Oh goodness. Right. Hannah, have you put some in?
No.
Could you put the ones that are in the chat in there so that
Yeah,
no,
can you go back to the QR code?
yeah, or yep, I will do. I'll just stop that for a moment and bear with us, everybody, because this is really important because as we do it, what we can do is anonymize, but we can kind of just we can just reflect on it in a moment. So can you see that, Hannah?
Yeah.
And can you see you can see the
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So I'll just bring it up. And as we're doing this, you see it's increasing as we go. So at the moment, we've got 6 of us have put this in. So I put in some for one of you, and Hannah is going to put in others for the other person who can access the Mentimeter word cloud. But what we're creating and is really an idea of just how things are, and that what people often carry within them. Because many people will talk about the idea that it's rare that they would share with others, just sometimes what's going through their minds, like feeling that sense of limbo, and so frequently the events which you were planning, perhaps even a holiday, perhaps even just going out for a meal, or even going to the supermarket, something that there's constantly something is in the way, there's no straightforward planning anymore. There's a sense of responsibility, and an extra looking after, but also there can be the reward of actually being alongside and knowing that you're able to contribute to that person's life in a way that um, perhaps nobody else can. But the with any word cloud, the words that are the biggest are the ones where most people have put them in. More people have put them in, right? So emotional, lonely, limbo, responsibility means that at least more than one person has put those in as one of the words. So what I wanted to do was just take this opportunity for anybody, if you feel able to. Um, and again, we can edit this, so we can edit it. But if anybody wants to say anything about this word cloud and whether they recognize any elements in there, or whether that some elements are surprising to them. So or you can put in the chat that, gosh, I get that. Yeah, it's good to see that other people kind of see this in the same way as I do, um, or we can actually come back to it at the end. I'll put it up at the end. Okay, but just taking a moment to see what's shared amongst us. Okay. So what I'll do now is I'll move on to the next part of the presentation. And Hannah, I think we definitely need to make sure that we've got time at the end where we know that everybody isn't being recorded, where we can kind of think through some of what we've just seen, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is you'll see that many of them, yeah. So I was surprised. I hadn't stopped to think how it feels before and how emotional it felt. Yeah, I must admit, when I was watching the word cloud kind of develop, it was quite hard to actually to see. And I really do appreciate your honesty as far as that's concerned. Let's go on to what you guys know you're doing each day to try and manage it, right? But also, what are some of the kind of um, simple by design ideas which are out there to try and help? So I'll just go back to my slides. Okay. Okay, so I only had to Google just, yeah, just like just put one thing around caregiver, and that's one thing. May I just stop at the moment, because sometimes we don't know what don't call ourselves caregiver, carer, informal carer, person alongside, partner, husband, wife. It's nobody, but it's rare that I can remember my mum when she was looking after my dad when he was very ill. She refused to go to anything to do with a carer because she said that, well, I've been married to him for this long. I don't see myself as a carer. But having said that, though, and again, we can come back to it in the discussion at the end. But if you just go in to, if you just Google onto the internet, then there are lots of different things come up in terms of just what goes on for those people who are alongside, right? And as I say, often aren't really spoken about, because obviously in many respects wanting to protect the person because you know that that person didn't invite that diagnosis into their lives. So often feeling reluctant to actually share your views about how it is for you. And that's why, and definitely within Maggie's and where we can within Better Together, we set up carers groups for people, for friends and families, so that they have a kind of a forum to say without edit and without any judgment just how it's impacting on them. But these are 12 some or 12 examples of when that caring becomes to the point of burnout. And it may be that some of these things you're recognizing, and I'm putting them up there not so that people are um, uh, um, or unsettled or unset or distressed in any way, because I know that there are ways in which I can help you with that, or indeed Amy, who's the other member of the psychology team, can help you, and that there's various different courses that we're running through Better Together and also through our communities. But at one end of the spectrum, there can be carers who feel, no, I've got this, I'm fine, I've got the right group of folk around me, I'm doing this, and it's going okay. And then through the spectrum, there can be at the other end of the spectrum, people feel very isolated, very alone, with various elements of these feelings of burnout. And as I said, we'll come back to this. We'll kind of put the recording off towards the end of the session and come back to this one and talk about it. Okay. And you'll have access to this set of slides. We'll make sure that anybody who's signed up has access to them so that you can reflect on them. Okay. But one of the things that happened this morning, and I said that I would include this, so is that I was talking to somebody who's caring for her husband with one of the conditions within the Better Together collaboration. And she was she was saying, do you know, Lesley, it's like, what's that game, you know, that game, right? And we couldn't remember the name, and then remembered it was called Buckaroo, right? But she said it's like that. It's such a fine balance. You're loaded with one thing, and then loaded in another thing, and then something else, and then something else, and then something, and it could be something so small, and you just lose it. You just lose it. And I said, oh, I've got to use that this evening. So we searched on the internet and found this particular picture, and she was really keen. I don't think she's able to come here this evening, but she said, tell me what they thought of it. Tell me what they thought of it. And so again, if you want to pop something into the chat or save it for later, then whether you ever feel like I'm just holding so much, I don't think I can hold anything more. And then it can be one small thing. So it could be that little loop of rope just on the horse's tail that actually just, you lose it. It's too overwhelming. You're perhaps angry in a way that you didn't want to be. You say something in an unguarded moment, and everything kind of feels as if it's falling apart. She wants some feedback on that one. So I'll ask you later what you think of the idea of Buckaroo. But what I'll do is I'll just kind of move through the slides. Some things, yeah, I'll just move through the slides. And just talking about some of the, if we talk about burnout, because I think sometimes it's worth actually stepping into that place because it is significant. And although you may not be at that end of the spectrum, it's worth looking at some of the causes that can leave you at the worst end, so that you can be offsetting it and making sure that you're addressing them and you're reaching out and you're finding the supports that you can en route. Because this is all there within the research, that it can be the emotional demands, and particularly the unpredictable nature of some of the emotional demands. And some of it can be the actual, it's can be referred to sometimes called emotional labor. So it's where you kind of keep tucking the emotions that you feel inside, right? So you're on the surface, you're presenting one image, because that's the most helpful containing way of supporting the person that you're alongside with the diagnosis. But which means that often that you're keeping how it's the emotional demands for you internally and not showing it. And obviously for any of us that takes our toll, which means there does need to be occasions where you can just say it without edit in a safe space and not feeling disloyal, because it's important that you have that outlet. There can be the sheer physical strain of actually caring, that you're actually making demands of your body that you wouldn't normally have to. And you do it, and you do it with grace, but it still can have impact on your, literally on your back, on your legs, on your, in terms of brain fog. And there can be, in terms of the causes, can be a lack of privacy. Really the kind of the idea of even that your house might actually, you're having to let people into your house which you wouldn't normally have to do. There can be the financial pressures of perhaps being only one income where you were used to two. And there can be social isolation. So it may be, again, you're doing it with grace, but it's the idea that your life becomes more focused on that person rather than some of the things that you used to do. Thankfully, a lot of the time you can find a kind of a middle way whereby some of those things that you both used to enjoy together, you can still do, but still there can be a social isolation. And also some of the social isolation being the real, the uncaringness of some folk, in that they feel uncomfortable talking about the person with a diagnosis, and so therefore they avoid you too. And so therefore the isolation. There's also the idea of role confusion, whereby it may be that your partners, that you're a married couple, and now you're becoming a carer for that person, and there's a sense of yeah, there's intimacy, but it's not the intimacy that normally would happen within a partnership, where you have, rather than being the lover, you're the carer, or indeed, where you're having to care, your child is staying with you for a lot longer than perhaps you'd anticipated, that they're not able to leave the home. And so that kind of role confusion of sharing a household as adults, rather than parent and child. And also the idea of living with uncertainty. And human beings, we hate living with uncertainty. Where possible, if we can predict what's going to happen, we will. And we planning is one of a deep source of solace. And so the idea of limbo can be so difficult. Okay. So I want to pause, because I know that I've thrown quite a lot at you, but there are also solutions to this. That it doesn't have to be that you get to that point of, say, with that buckaroo, where just that one small thing just throws everything into disorder. There are ways in which we can actually tackle this. But it usually requires you to be in discussion with others. So in a forum such as this, and it may be at the end of this evening, you say, can we have more of this? And most certainly, yes, we'll find a way in which we can bring people together. But also, one of the things which I'll often use in my presentations is the idea that sometimes we can be in the midst of caring, and it can be just such a whirl of constant demands. So it's the demand of your work, it's the demand of coming home from work, it's the demand of a hospital appointment. It can be a demand of so many things that rarely do we actually get the opportunity to just sit in silence and allow potential solutions to come to us. We can be, and Einstein always comes up with something, and he will talk about the importance of silence and the opportunity just to pause, so that you can stop this thinking swirl and allow ideas and solutions to just kind of come to you when you've got some clear thinking space. And that's one of the things that I know through any of the work that I do with, either directly with wives, partners, parents, is that idea of really finding a way within your day to actually create space. And a lot of our time, and even calls that I've had this morning, have been, how can we create space so that you've got some opportunity to actually think this one through, right? And also there's loads of stuff out there in terms of what to do. So dealing with caregiver burnout, or dealing with how to stop the potential for feeling overwhelmed. And they're good. And we'll make sure that those resources are available to you. But one of the things which often is there, and I'm just looking on this side, and I'll talk about them in more detail, is really actually thinking, what are my limits, right? What am I asking of myself that's completely unrealistic? That if I was talking to another guy in a similar position, would I ask that of them? Or would I suggest that of them? Well, no. But so why am I asking that of myself? Also understanding what you're dealing with. So what is it that you can give, and where do you have to, where can you actually get support in? How can you ask the communities, the charities that make up Better Together, what can they do to actually help you set reasonable goals, but also step in to help? But also, what things are part of this? You did not invite this into your life, right? And it is okay to accept that you can feel guilty, angry, irritable, stressful, resentful. Those are normal, right? And if you stop burdening yourself with extra guilt about having those feelings, then that just creates even more pressure. So it's the idea of that negative feelings are part of caregiving. And it's how we find a way in which we can channel those feelings and find acceptable ways of actually expressing them and releasing them. Okay. And then there's the other part of it, reaching out and finding people that you trust. Like, for example, say for myself or an Amy, that we can be somebody whereby you're talking in complete privacy to somebody who's not going to share, but and is not going to judge, and has actually heard similar stories before. And is all our role is to help you find ways forward, right? And so, and one of those and sorry, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was really within there is how you take care of your own health. Because I know a number of years ago when I was centre head for a Maggie Centre up in Scotland, I used to have a nurse come in and do health checks for carers. So she would just be checking in on your health alongside your emotional health, but very much what's going on with your health, because sometimes it can be grueling, and you're less likely to go to the GP for yourself than you are for the person that you're caring for. Or perhaps you have got a GP who asks about how you are, which is extraordinarily helpful. Or a medical team that says, how are you doing? Or a community that says, how are you caring? How's your health? I know you've had to be in hospital alongside your wee one for so long, but how's that impacting on you? Okay. Okay, and the other thing which I often share, and I've shared already today, so because it's so useful, is this idea. It comes from a clinical psychologist called Paul Gilbert, who's based down in Derby, and he is behind the idea of compassion-focused therapy. And what he introduces is what's called three systems. And the idea is, of human beings, we have three systems. We have a threat system, which works in our favor. It helps us to recognize threat and wash ourselves with the hormones, which actually help us to respond to that threat. We also have the drive system, which is that kind of like it washes us with dopamine, it motivates us, it drives us, we pursue things, we achieve things, right? But we also have a soothing system, right? And unfortunately, what happens oftenly when a physical health problem comes into a family and the demands that places on the family, is the threat system and the drive system that get activated, and we get caught up in that. It's like we're frightened, so we push ourselves harder and harder and harder. And as we push ourselves harder, that has an impact on our emotional well-being. So we become more frightened, and so we push ourselves harder. So people get caught in this kind of we feel threatened, so we push ourselves, we feel threatened, so we push ourselves. And in actual fact, the main thing that gets lost is this soothing system. And it's the opportunity just to pause, take a breath, and actually allow the natural opiates and oxytocin within our bodies to just get a chance. And it's at these things where we have to bring those in. We have to bring them in for the person that we're caring for, but also for ourselves. Because going for being caught in the threat drive is not sustainable. And so therefore, if you're in conversation with me, you always will hear me talking about, right, how can we bring the soothing system in? It's not indulgent to bring the soothing system in. And we've got a webinar which was done by my colleague Naomi, who's a clinical psychologist, who's moved on, has been replaced by Amy. But before she left, she did a webinar for us on this very subject, which we'll make sure that you have links to. It's how do you activate the soothing system, and how do you not feel guilty if you're activating it? Frequently, I have carers, well, not that frequently, and I wish it were more frequent. They'd phone me up and say, Lesley, I can't make it. I've got the opportunity for a hair appointment. I feel really awkward about this, but do you mind if we rearrange so that I can go and get my hair done? And I'm going, yes, go and get your hair done, because that's part of the soothing system. I'm not always the most soothing, but definitely get your hair done. It's more often than not is. So, so the sun is coming directly in on me at the moment. I'm not complaining because I'm up in Scotland and we haven't had a lot of it recently. So the top 5 tips that you'll, as I bring this together, are for anybody in Carrisborough or en route to it, is that idea of asking for help. And one of the most resilient thing that you can do, and it's always top of the list whenever you're looking at what is resilience, it's about asking for help, it's reaching out, it's not seeing asking for help as vulnerable. It's actually a part of you actually making sure that you're as resourced as possible to help those that you love and to protect and provide for those who you love. The other one is, and I know this is so much simpler to say it rather than actually do it, but I suppose it comes in, give yourself a break in 2 ways. So one, give yourself a break. Stop putting unrelenting demands on yourself and judgments of yourself that you wouldn't to another person, right? So give yourself a break as far as that's concerned, but also quite literally, how can you find just a break within your space? How can you make sure that you are still doing some of the things that you love, which used to nourish you beforehand? When I say find acceptance, that is not sucking it up, just getting on with it. This is how it is, right? It's a willingness to be with what is, right? Seeing the things that you can't change and finding a way of adapting to that, but then giving yourself the opportunity to actually work with the things that you can change and seeking that help to actually do that. And being willing to be with life as it is in this moment, but not this kind of just passive acceptance of this is my lot. That's not what I'm saying when I say find acceptance. It is very much the idea of, right, well, how can I not create additional burden for myself by struggling against or with what's happening? And I'm mindful of time, so I'll move through here. So the other one is taking care of your health, and the other is to find someone that you can talk to and share without edit. The other is really, in terms of what I mean by boundaries and self-compassion, are the idea of often we have the value of wanting to be compassionate to others. Well, values work both ways. If you're serving that value of compassion towards somebody else, you should also be serving that value of compassion to yourself. So that feeds in to the soothing, that green circle. But also the idea of boundaries. Boundaries are when to say no, when this is too much. And there's an amazing video that I know Hannah's seen and perhaps others, where this woman, she's called Bernie Brown, and she's written extraordinary books on all sorts of different subjects like shame, vulnerability. But she talks about the fact that the most passionate people that she ever meets are the ones who say, I would love to do that, but I can't. Right. And I'm going to plant that. Where in your lives can you actually say, I can't do that, right? And that might not be with the person who you're alongside, but it might be in terms of work, it might be in terms of other elements of your life where people are pressurizing you, and finding a way in which you can step away from additional pressures because you've got enough, right? And also, I just wanted to flag these different ways in which you can ask for additional support after this conversation this evening. So from myself as a clinical psychologist, or Amy as a family therapist, you just ask any of the problems that we come across. We can find ways in which we can look for solutions and be alongside and help you manage. But there's also courses. So we've got a course on managing stress and uncertainty coming up beginning of June, but also one called Moving Forwards, which is living the life that matters to you, which is about that idea of, right, it's for the person with the diagnosis as much as it is for people alongside, whereby it's like, I'm finding myself in this place. How can I live with this ongoing diagnosis? Or how can I live with the way that my life has changed because of the diagnosis? There's also community. How can we help you to reach out? They want to know what you need and how they can help. But also there are ways in which through Better Together we can help you get money advice for money worries, and advice around the benefits that you can claim.